This MFL Marmac Coach Conversation brought to you by Havlicek Trucking, by Meyer Auto Service, and by Birdnow Chevrolet. We're with head coach Dan Anderson. And coach, you told us last week, Dyersville-Beckman, a very, very solid football team, and they went out and proved that Friday night.
They did. You know, there's a reason that they're undefeated and they're ranked in the top 5 of the state of Iowa. You know, I think the score, though, was closer than maybe the final score. People that were at the game, I think, saw it was a closer game than maybe what the score showed. It's just, you know, we had too many turnovers in the game. We had 4, which is kind of uncharacteristic of us because I think we've had 6 or 7 in the whole season. And then we had 4 on Friday night. And not only do we have turnovers, but all 4 of those turnovers turned into touchdowns. So that's 28 points. And, you know, if you're going to beat a good team like Beckman that's undefeated and ranked, you can't have 4 turnovers that turn into 28 points.
And when you talk about those 4 turnovers, how many of those were Beckman just making plays? How many of those were just you guys having to do things a little bit better?
It was some of both. You know, there was times where they do a good job punching and stripping at the ball. We had 3 fumbles and 1 interception. You know, the 1 interception, you know, I think Carver would like to have that one back. He was getting sacked and he kind of just threw it up, and you can't do that. I mean, that's something that, you know, a young quarterback, sophomore, you know, he's going to make some mistakes, and that was one. He'd probably admit that. You know, we fumbled on a double handoff on a counter, which, you know, just can't happen. You know, I mean, we drill that all the time, but we fumbled on a double handoff, and then we had a bad snap, you know, or between the quarterback and center exchange that, I tell you what, on that turf down there at Beckman, you know, it's different playing on turf. That ball bounces differently. We played on grass all year, and I swear when that ball hits the turf, it bounces 10 yards when it hits the ground. And when that snap between the quarterback and center exchange, you know, it's like one bounce and it was out 10 yards away from where, you know, the snap happened, and they scoop it up and they run it about 30 yards. They did punch the ball, strip the ball out one time, and their linebacker scooped that up and went 58 yards for a touchdown. So all 4 of their turnovers that they got from us either led to a touchdown, you know, a scoop and score, or happened inside of our own 30-yard line. So when that happens, they've got a short field. You know, a lot of it was Beckman. They're just a good football team, but some of that's on us too. We just got to hang on to the ball better.
And despite the loss last week, bottom line, you're in the playoffs. You're still playing football. You got another opportunity this week. You know what happened last Friday night. How do you get your team back up and get them ready to take advantage of the opportunity that's been presented to you?
Right. You know, you can't dwell on that for very long. I mean, you told the boys it was all right. You know, they wanted that district championship, but just ran into a little bit better football team last Friday night. But you can't dwell on it because we've got the playoffs. We've done enough. You know, we're 6-2. You know, we've earned a playoff bid, and we've been playing in one of the toughest districts, you know, in the whole state of Iowa in Class A football. I mean, like I said early in the season, we have 4 teams in our district of 6 that were district champions last year, including us. And so, you know, that's a gauntlet to go through. I mean, just to prove how tough our district is, we beat Osage in a non-district game. Osage is 2A at a bigger class. They were district champions, and we beat them. You know, and then we beat New Hampton, who's in the playoffs in 2A, 42-14. You know, and those guys are also 3rd in their district in 2A, and we're 3rd in our district. So, I mean, this proves how tough our district has been. But I tell you what, we wanted those tougher teams in 2A because we knew we were going to have a tough road in the playoffs. And then we hope that the fact that we played such a tough schedule, you know, we're ready and we're battle tested to play in these playoffs. And I believe we are. I think our kids believe that too.
And in what ways does that tough schedule get you ready for this time of year? And knowing the fact that a lot of the teams you face teams just as tough throughout the regular season.
Well, that's right. I mean, just when you play tough teams, it just toughens you up too. And the kids, we've played in a lot of tough and close ball games where Denver, who's our opponent, you know, they're 7-1. And, you know, they've had 7 blowout wins. They've won by 30 points or more, and they've had a 25-point loss to Dyke. So they haven't played in a close game all year. And so, you know, we think the fact that we played in so many tight games with Osage and with Waterloo Columbus, and, you know, we played Beckman tough for 3 quarters. We really did, you know, until it got away from us in the 4th. But, you know, and even Cascade was 12-12 at halftime. So we played a lot of really close football games, and we just believe that that's going to make us tougher to beat in the playoffs. And that's what it's all about. And now it's about getting into the playoffs and making a run.
And Denver is going to be your opponent down at your place or their place on Friday night. this year's edition of the Cyclone, what impresses you about them?
They're a good program. I mean, I think they were the state semifinals in 16 and the state semifinals in 17. They're 7-1 this year. They're balanced. They've got a good rushing attack. They've got a 1,000-yard rusher. Their quarterback is thrown for right at 1,000 yards. So they're balanced on offense. They're fast on defense. They're not as big as Beckman, but they still are pretty good size. They're 230, 190, 270, and about 220 across the O-line. So they're big for a Class 1A team. Their running back's not quite as big as the Beckman running back, but he runs extremely hard. They've got several good receivers that are pretty shifty. They're not as tall as the Beckman guys at receiver, but they run really good routes. And like I said, defensively, those 7 wins that they've got, every one of those wins, they've held their opponents to 7 points or less. That's pretty impressive stats. I think they've only given up, besides the game against Lake New Hartford, who's ranked 4th, where they lost, I think in those 7 wins, they've given up 20 points. And so that's pretty impressive when you're giving up less than 3 points a game. They've had like 4 shutouts. And so that's really going to be a challenge for our offense. But, like we said, we've played in some really tough games against really good opponents all year long. And, I don't know. They've got some good teams in their district too, but I don't think they played as many good opponents as we've played.
And as for your kids, this is 3rd straight year in the playoffs. You've won playoff games during this streak in each of the previous 2 years. A lot of these kids have shined pretty big when it came to this key time of year. How comfortable does that make you as you get ready for Friday night?
Yeah, it makes me pretty confident. And I think that makes our kids confident too. I tell them all the time, I said, you guys have played in tough games. And we played against, an Edco team last year that was undefeated, and we beat them at their place. Then we've played against, South Winds, last year that, had only had 1 loss and actually, they were undefeated at the time too, I believe, and so we've played a lot of undefeated teams the last 2-3 years. And, we've won, several of those games. We lost a couple, to end our seasons, but our kids aren't intimidated by a 7-1 record because we've played some really good teams. And a lot of these kids that are playing this year were playing last year and playing the year before in those playoff games too. So we've got a lot of kids, even though some of them are only juniors and even sophomores, we've got 5 sophomores starting on defense, but several of those kids were starters last year as freshmen. And, they've got a lot of games under their belt. And so it's going to be a heck of a game. It's the only game in the state of Iowa and at 8-man A, 1A and 2A, where you have a 6-1 versus a 7-1 versus a 6-2. I mean, it's a tough, matchup for both of us. I'm sure that Denver's probably not real excited to have to face us at a 6-2 team, because a lot of those 2s versus 3s are 4-4 versus a 5-3. There's only 3 losses and 16 wins or whatever it is, between the 2 of us. And, there's 2 really good ball clubs. And I think if anybody in the area, if they're out of the playoffs or if there's any fans that don't know where to go, drive down to Denver on Friday night, because I think you're going to see one heck of a ball game.
It should be indeed that, and hopefully you guys can move on to next week. Keep your kids healthy. We wish best of luck.
All right, thanks, Darren. Appreciate everything you've done this year.
Dan Anderson is the head coach of the MFL Marmac Bulldogs, and Cyclones in Denver in the first round of the playoffs come Friday night.